Today's conversation is going to be a little bit different. I'm going on a bit of a rant today, but I think it's going to be really helpful and practical. We're going to be discussing success metrics. And are you using the right success metrics for your season? That's the first chunk of our conversation today. The second chunk, sorry to use the word chunk, but the second chunk of our conversation is going to be all about what sort of business do you want? Do you want a big business or do you want a fun business? And there's no right or wrong. They're just different types of businesses. You got to work out what sort of business that you want. And I describe the type of business I'm building and what I want, and it will help you to work out what you want as well. So I think it's going to be really useful, our conversation today around as we transition from 2024 into 2025, as we make that transition. It's going to help you to work out what are the metrics that you need to be focusing on for your next season, and then what sort of business do you want to grow. Let's get into it. This conversation on The Expert Edge. Hey, it's Colin, and you are listening to the Expert Edge podcast. I was a professional speaker for over a decade, and now I focus on helping coaches, speakers, and course creators to speak and sell on virtual and live stages. The Expert Edge podcast is weekly content focused on helping you build your expert business. We cover marketing, storytelling, sales, communication skills, and so much more. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, and make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. So let's have a conversation about what it means to define your own success. I think that in this coaching and course creation industry, especially on social media, if you look at it, the numbers of what things used to be compared to what they are now have drastically increased. I feel like people used to talk about making $1 million in a year. Now they're talking about making $100 million in a year. Or, it's kind of like $10 million is the new $1 million. Or maybe social media used to be like, oh, if you could get to 10,000 followers, that was the pinnacle. And now, 100,000 followers is kind of the new pinnacle. Now, none of these metrics are bad in essence. The biggest thing is realizing that, are they the metrics that you want to be judging your life on in this season? Are they the metrics that you want to be using to build your life in this season? Now, if you are fully all in on social media and you're growing something, right, you may want to use some metrics like likes, followers, all that sort of stuff to judge on how you're doing with it. But I think the danger of it in the expert industry, sometimes you can only see one metric as the main metric that you're judging yourself on. We just came back from a 12-day trip. We were driving with our family. I've got a young son named Jonah and Georgia, a daughter called Georgia, and my wife. We just spent like 12 days on the road driving down the Pacific Northwest. So it's like Oregon and Seattle and all that sort of stuff. And it was just an amazing experience. Like, we got to spend time with the family. We got to see all the national parks. We also, just previous to that, we just spent some time in Yosemite National Park. I got to see El Capitan, which, if you've watched that movie Solo or Free Solo, gosh, it's just a monster of a climbing cliff. And the reason why I'm sharing that is because for us this year, a big metric has been, how much time can we spend on holidays? How much time can we spend with the family? Like, that's been a big metric. That hasn't always been the metric. A lot of the time, the metric, especially when we first moved to the US, was how do we get this business viable? And, are we kind of surviving? It was like the metric, right? But we've got to a point in our business and our life where we've built a great team. We've built systems and automations in the business. And the new metric has been very much more focused on, like, how do we create a better lifestyle, a better experience? The reason why I'm bringing this up is I think you need to look at the metrics that you're focused on in each season. And just because you're focused on one metric in a previous season doesn't mean it's the right metric for this season. One idea that has really driven my experience of my life has been choosing a word, like choosing one key word that I can focus on for a particular season. I remember it was about 8 or 9 years ago, and I share this because it had such a big impact on us. We chose the word space, and space represented kind of creating space in our life. And that was actually for us, we wanted to slow down a bit, to be quite frank. We were going through some personal stuff, and we wanted to create some space to be able to recover. We had some health challenges and things like that. And so for us, we actually took our foot off our eye. Well, we took our eye off like a revenue goal. We took our eye off a growth goal in the business. And we were like, hey, if we just maintain, or even if we don't make as much as last year, I'll be just as happy, because our focus is actually space. Our focus is not just on revenue, if that makes sense. And so the reason why I bring this up is having a word or a focus is really powerful for your season. We're coming into the end of 2024. We're about to start 2025. And reflecting on what that word is for your year makes a big difference. Now, I will say that I've had years, I remember about 2 years ago, one of the words was growth. We had a massive focus on growth. It was hiring staff. It was scaling the business. We almost basically doubled our business in terms of revenue. And that was a big focus because that was my intention for the year, right? And so what tends to happen is we transition from one year into the next year, and we kind of keep the same focus. We keep the same context, where you need to ask yourself and go, what's the metrics and the context of my next season? That's the big question you have to ask yourself. You know, I have this conversation a lot of the time with my Self-from-Stage elite students of, as we come into the end of this year, you know, what is the contextual focus for 2025? Like, what should be your focus? What should be your context, your goal in 2025? And what are the metrics that you're looking at in terms of focusing on that? And when you think about it, there's a few big buckets that you can have metrics around. So you can have metrics around business growth, right? That could be revenue. It could be team growth. I think it is important to have some metrics around that. So have some focus on that, right? Another area is relational metrics, right? Like your time that you're spending with your friends. You could have family, like a family metric. How many nights are we spending, you know, having dinner at the dinner table, as opposed to, you know, everyone just watching TV and eating? You could have metrics around savings, like how much money are we saving? You could have spiritual metrics. It could be like, how much time am I spending in my spiritual life? Emotional metrics, physical, like even, I know for me, that's been a big focus for me this year, has been really working out my physicality. I'm 43 now, and I've noticed that, you know, as I've just kind of tipped over 40, my body hasn't been responding like it used to respond. And I was like, man, I need to dial this thing in. I need to work on this, because in an expert business, your physicality, your energy is the capital that drives an expert business, a personal brand business. So if your energy is off, your business will be off. And so that, for me, I've invested a lot, money and time into my physical experience of my own body and my energy. If you follow me on Instagram, I was just at Stretch Lab. Stretch Lab, they basically like stretch out your body, right? Which is just weird. When I first saw the concept, I was thinking, there's no way that thing is going to work. And here I am, long-term customer. I do personal training, like a couple of times a week, I'll do personal training. Even just like breath work. I love the Wim Hof app. It's like $35 a year, and you get access to like Wim Hof methodology and stuff. It's so good. An interactive breathing experience. I do that, you know, every other day or so. You know, all of these things, even like I've been doing a lot of work with like vitamins, like custom vitamins and skin rejuvenation and all sorts of stuff, right? Stuff that I wasn't really interested in several years ago, but for the season of my life, that's an important metric for me. So I'm starting to get more and more data around that. I've done blood tests, DNA tests. Like I've invested time and money into that area because that is a data point. That's a metric that is more and more becoming important to me. And so the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you as an Expert Edge listener, you're on a journey, and I don't know where you're up to in your season. Maybe this year has been a really great year, and you've had a lot of growth and a lot of momentum. Maybe it's been a really challenging year with your business, but maybe you've had some really great wins personally. Maybe you've had some great wins in your physicality, right? In your fitness. I don't know what this year has looked like, but I know that if you can work out what are going to be the key metrics that I want to focus on in the next year or in the next season, you'll be a lot happier. You'll be building your life more balanced, and you'll be creating the life that you've always desired. Like I mentioned, this year we have grown the business. Our business has grown about 25% at a top line revenue perspective, which is great, because I will say that I've chatted with a lot of people. It's not everyone, but there's a bunch of people who have had a really tough year. Like, business has been really hard, and we've had a very blessed year, revenue wise, which has been great. We've also grown the team, but I will say one of our main focuses for this year, because we put the team in place, was actually having some more time with the family. We've done 12 trips this year where I've taken our family with us. Now, we take our family away when we do business trips and things like that. So that's obviously counting some of those as well. But I would say half of those trips have literally just been, going away on vacation. In fact, it was kind of funny. We spent 3 weeks in Europe, in London, so in England specifically, but we were in London, and then we went down to the Cotswolds. We went down to, we did Stonehenge and all those kind of iconic things with our whole family. We came back. That was like 3.5 weeks, that trip. And we were exhausted. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. You know how you ever come back from a vacation and you think, I feel like I need a vacation to recover from the vacation? That's how I felt. And normally it's like, yeah, but we've got to get back into work because we've just had so much time off. What we did was we were like, well, let's book a vacation to recover. So we booked 10 days in Cabo, and we went to the Hilton in Cabo for 10 days. And that was just amazing. Now, I will say that some of these, I'm jumping on what's cool. And this is what's cool about designing the right type of business is, when I'm going on these trips, most of the time we're exploring, we're doing stuff with the family and things like that. But I'm also hosting webinars. I'm hosting group coaching sessions with my group coaching clients with our elite program. I'm running webinars. I'm running virtual events. I'm sometimes speaking at events. So, I might do 2 hours of work in the day, and then we go and see Stonehenge. Or I might do an hour of work in the evening doing a coaching call with our group. And then, then we go out to a pub and with the family kind of thing. I'm looking at the quality of my life, the quality of those metrics. Now, I will say that in really growing the business, it required a lot from me. And I think there's like seasons of, like I said, what you want to focus on. For us, when we were trying to get momentum in the business, and that was a big word that we had, especially when we first moved to the US about 8 years ago. Momentum was a big word because I didn't have it. And we moved with like basically no clients. We didn't know where we were going to live. We had a few friends here. That was about it. And I was like, we need momentum. And I worked my butt off. And I invested in myself, in my own education, in mentoring for me, all that sort of good stuff. I invested in that big time. I remember when we were launching Self from Stage Academy, I was working literally from 7 a.m. till about 9 p.m. at night. It was so intense when I was building that curriculum and delivering the beta experience of Self from Stage Academy. It was overwhelming and it wasn't sustainable. But for me, that was the metric. The metric was momentum. That was my focus. And when you have a contextual clarity of what your focus is, you're going to feel happier. You're going to feel more engaged. And so there is a trade-off for us to get to the point where we could have a year like we've had this year, where the business has grown, but we've also taken 12 family trips where we've gone away and done stuff with the family, whether a bit of business, like complete vacation, all that sort of stuff. I've had to pay the cost of that to be able to set that up. And so I'm not saying that I genuinely don't think that you can build a multi-million-dollar business like we have and just basically be on vacation every day, right? Unless you kind of hit the crypto lottery or something like that, you're not going to build a multi-million-dollar brand, influence, business, and be on vacation all the time. But you also need to see the season that you're in, right? And count that cost. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think some of you are using metrics that are out of date for your season. That's the biggest thing. Is that some of you are using life metrics and business metrics that are out of date for your season. And you need to work out, is that the metric I want to be having as the main metric in my next season? That's the distinction there. Now, one revelation that I've had and I talk with my students quite a lot about is thinking even about what type of business do you want. I know for me, I've been sat in sessions of scaling experts where they would talk about the process of scaling the business. And I have some dear friends of mine who truly want a big business. They want a conglomerate. They want $100 million a year business, right? Like for them to hit $10 million in revenue is like, that's just the start of their business. They want team, they want big influence, they want a big business. Like they want it. Like they want to own the freaking industry. And that's amazing. Like if that's what you want, go after that thing. Like that is truly amazing. I don't want that. I've worked out that in my personality, my life, I love having a fun business as opposed to a big business. And I think as well, this is another metric you need to think about. For me, a fun business is usually sits around that $1 to $3 million mark. It's profitable, agile, relationally driven, doesn't have really many layers in the business. Like the team is small. It's usually like a small team. But I think anywhere between that 1 to like 5, probably $5 million, you can run a fun business that is very agile, very flexible, doesn't have much complexity, it moves fast, and very profitable. You can run a great business at that level. I realized that I've been in the expert industry full-time as either a coach, a content creator, a course creator, a speaker for 15 years now, almost 16 actually. And I realized that I really like fun businesses. Like I like smaller, agile, profitable businesses as opposed to these massive, like I don't want to build a Tony Robbins business. I would like to speak on a Tony Robbins stage, but I'm not looking to build a Tony Robbins business. Does that make sense? If you want to do that, like all kudos to you, go for it. Like you should lean into that and go for it. But you've got to work out what you want to do. For me, I really like being the influence of the influencers. And I've had the unique opportunity to build a skill set where I've built a reputation where, the biggest influencers in the world will ask me to advise them on the specific niche that I am in, right? And that for me has been my intention. I've really thought about going, I don't want to build a massive beast of a complexity of a business. I would rather be someone who's in high demand, is kind of like in the ear of the biggest influencers in the world and almost not behind the scenes, but in the influence pocket of the biggest of those people who are running those big businesses. I love that space. You're just going to work out what you are, like what space you fit in. And when you work out what space you fit in, then life becomes a lot easier. Life becomes more congruent and you enjoy what you do even more. So that's my thoughts. A little bit of a rant today on success metrics and do you have the right success metrics for your season? And do you want to build a big business or a fun business, like a small business that's fun? There's some thoughts. Now, if you've been listening to this, you found this helpful. First of all, make sure you go and check out Conversion Story Formula. If you're a coach, a course creator, you haven't designed your conversion story yet, that's usually the place that people start with. You can go to conversionstoryformula.com and you'll have your conversion story in the next 48 hours. Like you'll have it designed and shared in 48 hours. Great place to start if you're just starting out with me. The second thing is if you want to build a high converting presentation, you can go and check out colinboyd.co/workshop, and that'll take you through a training where I show you the 5 secrets to designing a high converting presentation. That's for people who are they're already serious about building their expert business and they want to build that high converting presentation that gets them clients every single time. And if you're already fully in your business, maybe you're generating between $3,000 to $10,000 a month and you want to scale up to $50,000 a month, etc. You can check out colinboyd.co/scale. And that's where you can have a conversation with one of our coaches and we can have a look at where your business is at, what you're doing, what some of the challenges are, and we can chat through some different ways that we can help you at a higher level. So that's some options. If you've resonated, you've enjoyed our conversation today, and all those links will be in the show notes. Thank you. Thanks for being a part of our conversation. If you found this helpful, share it with a friend, hit the share button, send them an SMS. Do you remember those SMSs? Do we even call them that anymore? Send them like a Google iCloud link. That's like 2 different companies. But send them one of those links and tell them it was good. And because I know for me, I always listen to podcasts that my friend texts me about. So I'd appreciate if you do that, because that's how the podcast grows. Bless you guys, and we'll talk to you next week on The Expert Edge.